Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Happy Wednesday to you all. Arsenal back in Champions League action over in Belgium. The Gunners take on CLUB Brugge or CLUB Brugge, depending on which language you speak, because there are multiple languages that are spoken in Belgium, I am told. There you go. I've been doing some research this morning ahead of commentary on tonight's game, which I'm really, really looking forward to. So if you are looking for the highlights later on or want to watch the game back on arsenal.com, myself and Ian Selly will be on commentary duty this evening. Really, really looking forward to it as always. Hopefully it's a lot better than the game that I covered last night. I covered Cambridge United against Chesterfield from League Two yesterday. And to say it was a tough watch would probably be the understatement of the year. I'm extremely lucky to do what I do. I'm extremely fortunate that I get to call that work. But there are times where some of the games do feel like a slog. And that was certainly one of them. Okay, a big hello to Thibaut, who says, hi, Harry. Just catching this live because I'm from Bruges and it's a home game for me for once. Brilliant stuff, mate. Do you know what? What do you say? Do you say Bruges or Brugge? What do you say? What is the correct way of pronouncing their name? I've done some research this morning. As I say, I think I know what the answer is, but I'd love to hear it from someone who speaks the native tongue. So do let me know, Bruges or Brugge? That is the question on today's podcast. No, I'm kidding. Look, on today's show, we're going to break down Mikel Arteta's press conference. It's Brugge, according to Guitar Solo. We're going to break down the press conference. We're going to react to some of the updates that Mikel Arteta provided. We're also going to pick an 11 that I'd like to see start the game over in Belgium tonight. We do need to rest people. On yesterday's pod, I went through a list of players that I believe it is essential get a rest tonight. But the more I think about it, the more that list that I put out is probably unrealistic. Just in that, I said, for instance, Calafiori shouldn't play. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, he shouldn't. He needs protecting. He's got a questionable, patchy injury record. He looked finished against Villa the other day. But then I look at the Wolves game and I think, well, he's suspended, isn't he? So actually, playing him tonight isn't the end of the world. The question is, has tonight's game come around too soon? I mean, from Saturday lunchtime until Wednesday night, you should be fine, really, in theory. So yeah, let's see what Mikel does there. But I'm going to share with you guys the team I think should start. Look, the truth is, defensively, we don't have that many options. Defensively, we are stuck for options. And so we are going to have to play some players that in an ideal world, I don't want to see in the team. For example, you're probably going to see Jurrien Timber tonight. And Arsenal put out their match day graphic on social media. And I don't know how much you can read into this. Jurrien Timber was in it. So there's a good chance that he starts at centre-back tonight. Anyway, look, let's work our way through today's show. Let's start breaking it all down. And let's kick off then, shall we, with Mikel Arteta's press conference. Now, I don't normally sort of take too much notice of the press conference lead-ups, if you like. Like, I feel like a lot of people sort of gather around and they're rubbing their hands together and they're all sitting there and they're going, oh, yeah, this is amazing. We're going to get all the update. We're going to get all the information. And I often look at these Arteta press conferences and think, no, we're still going to be left guessing. We're still going to be without some of the information that as a fan base, we are desperately craving. And that was the case again yesterday. Now, I appreciate that as a manager, you don't want to give everything away. I appreciate that as a coach, you want to keep your cards as close to your chest as possible to make the preparation for the other team as difficult as can be. But there are certain topics and certain subjects that right now, the Arsenal fan base need updating on. William Saliba is one of those topics. And really and truly, we still haven't had any clear information or update on that. But anyway, we'll work our way through what was said in the press conference, and then we'll get into that. I'm not going to bore you with all of it, because if you want to read it or read the transcript that is on arsenal.com or watch it back, you can do that. He talked about the reaction to the defeat at the weekend. He said it was strange because we haven't lost that many, but it was a good opportunity to reflect. He's happy that we're playing pretty soon after, because that gives you a chance, obviously, to rectify and get back to winning ways. This was an interesting bit with regards to Gabriel Jesus. Now, it was reported on Tuesday that Gabriel Jesus had been left out of the squad. And that's the squad that is registered, of course, for the Champions League. I said on my podcast when I read that I was disappointed in that I felt that Gabriel Jesus had something to offer, that the games against the likes of Brugge, the games against Kairat Almaty, these are games in which Gabriel Jesus could be given minutes to start building himself up so that he can hopefully help us as the season goes on. He is in the squad, Gabby Jesus, but that is as a result of Max Dowman picking up an injury. So those reports were probably not inaccurate. There probably was a plan to include or to not include, I beg your pardon, Gabriel Jesus. But the fact that Dowman's picked up this injury, an attacking player, and that Gabriel Jesus has become available a lot faster than maybe people were expecting, that means that, of course, there is a space for Gabby Jesus. And I'm glad he's in it. I'm not glad that Max Dowman's injured. And some of you are saying in the live chat that Max Dowman's going to be out for a couple of months. Let's have a quick look, because apparently David Ornstein's posted that. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, look, Max Dowman expected to be out for approximately 2 months after suffering ankle ligament damage. 15-year-old England youth international attacker injured in challenge by opponent in the friendly against Manchester United, but it's anticipated that surgery is not required. So Max Dowman suffering a setback there. But look, Gabby Jesus is the one that comes in. Gabby Jesus will have the opportunity to return to the Champions League. And I'd love to see him tonight in some capacity. I'm not saying he should start the game. We'll come on to the starting 11 in a bit, but I'd quite like to see him in the team, in the squad, I beg your pardon, and off the bench at some point. So what did Mikel Arteta have to say on this particular subject? He said, yeah, so first of all, unfortunately, Max picked up an injury last weekend and had to come off. He did some scans and he's going to be out for weeks, more like months, according to David Ornstein. And then we have the situation of Gabby Jesus, who we were expecting to be training with us by the end of December. Gabby's been pushing every single day and he kept telling everybody, I'm going to be earlier, and he has done it. So thanks to his work and all the work of the medical staff, he's back, and we had the possibility to make a swap there, and we have done it. Yes, on one side, you see Max and the situation. On the other, you see the joy and how happy Gabby is to be back in the Champions League. So Mikel Arteta making the point there that on the one hand, he's gutted for Max Dowman, but at the same time, he's obviously pleased for Gabby Jesus, who gets his opportunity to return to the Arsenal squad for the Champions League, and hopefully he plays a part in the coming weeks. This was the bit, though, that everybody was waiting for. The update on Declan Rice, William Saliba, and Leandro Trossard. Declan Rice was not seen in training. Neither was William Saliba, nor was Leandro Trossard. Mikel Arteta clarifying that Declan Rice was ill. He said he was quite sick after the Villa game and he hasn't travelled with us. William is still not available. Put a pin in that bit because we're going to come back to that in a second. And Leo again picked up another knock in an area where he had the issue. I don't expect that it's going to be long, but unfortunately, he cannot be here. Leandro Trossard would have loved to go and play in Belgium, I'm sure. But I said put a pin in the William Saliba bit because we've got to come back to that. Declan Rice is ill, okay? I'm pretty confident that Declan Rice will recover in time for the weekend's game. He gets a break tonight, doesn't have to travel. Bring him back in on Saturday against Wolves. We go again in the Premier League. Fine. Leandro Trossard picked up a little something. I thought as much during the Villa game. We weren't sure when we were doing the commentary with David Hillier if it was him running out of gas or if he had suffered something. The feeling that we had was that he must have pulled up with something, because you don't often bring someone on and take them off. And the idea that he'd run out of legs and was being replaced that late in the game, it just didn't makes sense in my mind. So I'm not surprised to hear that Leandro Trossard's picked up a bit of a problem. But William Saliba, man, like, what is the deal with that? And this is where I get frustrated, because as a fan base, and I touched on this right at the start of the pod, there are certain things that we want to know. There are certain things that we would feel far more confident about if we were in the know. And I'm not saying you have to say William Saliba is going to be back on Saturday or the Saturday after. I'm not saying you have to be that open. Yeah, as fans, we want to know, we want to hear it. We want to be as clued up as possible. Of course we do. That's the nature of fans. But at the same time, I appreciate and understand that as a coach, as a manager, you want to keep your cards close to your chest, and you will be as secretive as is possible. But there is a growing concern right now within the Arsenal fan base about William Saliba and this injury. You know why? Because we were told it was a matter of days, and he's missed a matter of weeks now. That's why people are concerned. That's why people are panicking. That's why there's a wobble of the confidence within a lot of Arsenal fans about what we can go on to achieve, because we have been weaker defensively in Saliba's absence. We've been weaker defensively in Gabriel's absence, and that's perfectly understandable. These are two of the best centre-halves right now in world football. To be without both of them is a huge blow. But if we knew that William Saliba was, very close to returning, we would sort of feel a little bit more at ease. If we knew that it was going to be 2-3 weeks more, then we'd stop panicking ahead of every press conference and going into every press conference with everything crossed, praying that we're going to get an update on what William Saliba's condition is. I don't even know what the injury is. Does anyone else know in the live chat? Do we know exactly what the injury is? Everybody's been so coy about it. Like, we just have no information around this whatsoever. And as I say, on the one hand, I understand not giving a definitive return date. But when you say it's a matter of days and it turns into weeks, you cannot complain, or you cannot be surprised when lots of Arsenal fans start to worry and start to question why we were told it was a matter of days and now it's turned into weeks. Now, if it was initially a matter of days and then he suffered a setback, tell us. Tell us. Will that go down well? No, it will go down like a lead balloon, of course. But once that initial frustration subsides, people will feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident. The problem we have now is that we just do not know what the deal is with William Saliba, and that is causing a greater level of anxiety than you would have if you knew a little bit more. Kevin Donnelly says, we hide Saliba's injury. It's almost as if we're embarrassed to announce the legitimacy of his injury. Our failure to keep players fit is actually quite embarrassing. The Gooner says the same thing happened last season with his back. Neo Draken says, 9 days? Is that what you're saying since he got injured? Yeah, but in footballing terms, like, it's more than a week, hasn't it? So it's turned into weeks. Even in normal terms, 9 days is more than a week. So you're into the weeks territory, aren't you? Because it's not 1 week, it's multiple weeks now. We're in the second week. What else have we got? Just having a look at what people are saying. The Gooner says, nope, we have no idea what it is, but I have a feeling it's his back. Andy says, it doesn't make his recovery even any quicker, even if we know, though. Yeah, I agree. Of course, it doesn't speed up the recovery, but just to know what's going on, or to have an idea of what's going on, it gives you a bit more comfort, doesn't it? You know what you're going into, you know what you're facing. Because had they come out and said, had Mikel said in a press conference, I beg your pardon, he's not going to be back this week, then you look at it and you go, CLUB Brugge, Wolves, not ideal, but we can cope. And you take solace from the fact that you know that these are two fixtures that, at least in theory, we should be able to cope with William Saliba's absence. And then you can kind of just batten down the hatches and get on with it, like, and just move forward, right? The problem is that when you don't know, your mind runs away with itself. You start to think things. You start to worry about things. That's when the anxiety kicks in for me. Look, I know that us knowing exactly what the injury is or how long he's likely to be out for isn't going to change anything in terms of getting him back quicker, but it does just put people's minds at rest. And I think in a season where we are expected, not hoping, we are expected to go on and win major silverware, We could do without these wobbles in terms of confidence from the fans every few weeks, because the problem that you have with that is that it does translate. It does create an anxiety. You know, you go out on the pitch at Emirates Stadium, you can feel it when the crowd are nervous, and that will come across on the pitch. There's a big difference at Emirates Stadium, generally speaking. And I know we're talking about wobbles now. That wobble probably exists after Villa, but there is a big difference in terms of how the Emirates Stadium was maybe 2 years ago, when the minute things got tough or we were struggling to break someone down, that frustration would kick in. Whereas now you feel like everybody's a little bit more chilled and a little bit more patient. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. SFP says Arteta went from "I don't want to let the opponents know" to "I am going to lie to all our supporters. He's playing with us, and while he's not winning anything, he's giving people the ammo against him." Look, I don't think that Mikel Arteta's intention is to lie to the fans. I think people who say that, you're taking it too far. And I've just talked about overthinking and maybe being a little bit reactionary to stuff. That's a classic example of that, okay? Mikel Arteta doesn't wake up in the morning and say, "How can I con or trick the Arsenal fans today?" That's not what he does, okay? Mikel Arteta will have his reasons. The question is, in a situation like this, do you have to put your reasons and your principles to one side? You have to compromise on them ever so slightly just to manage the mood of the fan base. I would argue that you do. I would argue that you do. And has Mikel Arteta deliberately avoided telling the truth in the past when it comes to certain things because that's what he thought was the right thing to do? Probably. That's absolutely fine. That's football management. Did Sir Alex Ferguson tell everybody what he was thinking every single time he went into a press conference? Did Arsene Wenger do it? No. There are certain things that are best kept in-house. And I think no week is better in terms of highlighting that than what we've seen happen on Merseyside, where Mo Salah has come out and aired Liverpool's dirty laundry, his own dirty laundry, and has created a massive talking point and discussion around himself and Liverpool Football Club and Arne Slot, which is in no way, shape or form healthy at this moment in time. So, yeah, look, do I get frustrated with some of the things that the manager says? Of course I do, like everybody else. I guess the point I'm making is that I don't believe he's deliberately intending to mislead. I think some people point out examples of where he said stuff in press conferences that turned out not to be right in terms of stats. Maybe he's just inaccurate. You know, maybe that's what he thought was the case. In actual fact, it wasn't. Nobody has the time during a press conference to do a search when he pulls out some completely unexpected stat from his back pocket and pull him up if he's wrong at that point. People can correct it afterwards, of course, and that's what people on YouTube do. But yeah, I'm not convinced that he's deliberately lying to us. In fact, I'm adamant that that's not the case. Anyway, just elsewhere on the press conference before we move on, he talked about Max Dowman's injury, but obviously we've had that update from David Ornstein now, so we've got a little bit more information on that. This was another bit. Had I been in the press conference yesterday, had I been in Belgium, my question would have been around Christian Norgard. My question would have been, what's the reason that Christian Norgard has played as little minutes as he has during a period when we're hearing lots about the need for rotation, the impact of fatigue? Why is a player who is a experienced Premier League player who was the captain of a very good Brentford side, why is he being overlooked? Why is he not being introduced? Now, I can bet that the answer I would have got would have been something along the lines of, well, you know, we've got to assess the opponent, the game state, etc., etc. I'm very happy with Christian, blah, 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 blah. And that would have been the classic skimming over the question type thing. But I would have asked it. I really legitimately would have asked it this time, because I've grown incredibly frustrated with the lack of minutes afforded to Christian Norgard. And this is coming from someone that didn't really rate the signing. When it was announced, the amount of crap I got from people because I said, I'm not really sure Christian Norgard's an Arsenal level player. It was get behind the team, support the team, trust the manager, back the manager. So I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. But yeah, the question is around Christian Norgard. And this is what Mikel Arteta responded. He said, I'm really happy with how he's come to the club, especially with him and everything that we need to do in many areas, not only on the pitch, but what he has to do. He excels in the manner that we expect him to. I think it's similar to Ben White or Miles. They haven't played as much as expected, but they're very positive. Okay, so that still doesn't explain it, does it? It still doesn't explain it. He was also asked if he would choose one player who would never get injured. Who would it be? That's a really good question. One we can debate in the chat on an upcoming episode for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Let's go back into the comments before we take a short pause and start looking at the lineup for tonight's game. Guna Oz says, I always say, Arteta has mastered the art of saying what people wanted to hear while not giving any or very little information. I don't know if that's good or bad. Well, look, overall, the results are good. So to knock his approach too much would be a little bit redundant, in my opinion. SFP says, Harry, you agreed with me anyway. You just put it in a softer way. Did he lie to us? Yes. Did he do it deliberately? Yes. Because if you know the truth and you tell us something else, that's the definition. I put it softer because I don't see it as this sort of massive crime against Arsenal fans that some people do. And I think language is important there because you can be frustrated by something without wanting to sack a manager for it. And I think the problem is that when you use language like he lied to us, he misled us, etc., without understanding and accepting that there is a reason behind that, a reason that serves the good of the football club, at least in his mind, then you start to spark the kind of debate around Arsenal that just isn't healthy, in my opinion, and is an example of people taking it too far. So yeah, that's why I sort of reworded it and put it in my own way. Neo Draken says, Harry, I think Arteta is simply reporting what the club's medical staff told him, including when he said it was a matter of days. That's clearly what the medical team told him. Yeah, absolutely. And this is why, again, Mikel Arteta is the spokesperson because he's the one that has to sit down in front of the media ahead of every game and after every game. But, he can only go by what he's told by his staff. He's not a medical expert, nor does he claim to be. There have been a lot of suggestions recently, haven't there, online? And again, we're talking about the online world here, which doesn't always represent and reflect the real world. It does sometimes, but it doesn't always, it's fair to say. One of the most frustrating things I read on a regular basis is it's the training methods. It's Mikel Arteta's training methods. Mikel Arteta was asked what he's seen when analysing the injuries, and he said, it's not only one season, it's about some of the players having played. It starts to get overloaded and you start to ask them again and again to play. Others, because as well, the moment that you have an injury, you're more likely to have another injury. And that's been a consequence of some of the states as well. We're on it. He was then asked whether it's because players have been overtrained. And he said, and this is in line with something that he said very, very recently, and something that I heard from a sports injury expert. He was asked whether it's because the players are overtrained, and he said, no, because we don't train. Today, we've done 20 minutes. So it's probably not because we've overtrained the players. This is the problem that we have in modern football, okay? And this goes back to the schedule. Are Arsenal perfect in managing this? I think the results say that they're not. I think the results give people every right to ask this question and give people every right to come up with their own theories and with their own beliefs around whether those doing the medical side of things at Arsenal are as effective in their job and in terms of the results as others at other clubs, right? That's an absolutely fair observation to make and a fair question to ask. But this is the really, really important context. We don't train. Today, we've trained 20 minutes. So it's probably not because we've overtrained our players. You speak to anyone in the football industry that has worked as part of a club, as part of a high-profile physiotherapy firm, as someone who's worked in sports science, they will tell you that the problem that we are facing in modern football right now is quite simple. The schedule is too much. Because of the schedule, let's take this week, for example, okay? So we played Aston Villa on Saturday. Sunday would have been a recovery day. Monday would have been training, but you'd have probably been without some of our players that are, recovering from knocks or issues that they've picked up at the weekend. If they don't have a rest day, by the way, somewhere here as well, like a day off. I don't know exactly how many days off. All right, let's do it again. So you play the game on Saturday. Maybe on Sunday you have a day off. Monday, you're still recovering from Saturday's game. Tuesday, you're preparing for Wednesday's game, but you've got a flight later on in that day that's going to take you over to Belgium. So you do, as Mikel Arteta explained, 20 minutes of training. Then you go to Brugge. What are you going to do on the match day? Not much, if anything at all. Then you play the match. Thursday, you're recovering from the match and you'll travel back. Friday, you've got a training session, but there'll probably be people carrying stuff from the midweek game. And Saturday is a match day again. The problem is that there is no time to train in between games. And so the muscles that you are relying on are not trained enough to the point where they can then withstand the intensity and the physical levels that the top level matches demand and require. And so you are more susceptible to pulls, to injuries, and to problems. Now, I'm not sitting here making excuses for Arsenal because our injury record is far worse than that of many other clubs. And that requires, at the very least, an investigation. And that requires that we look at ourselves, we look in the mirror, and we try and figure out what we can do better. Okay? No doubt about that whatsoever. But there is a rise in the volume of injuries across the board. And that is because of what I've just explained. There is no time to train in between games. There is no time to train enough to ensure that those muscles are ready and sort of trained up to the level that's required to then be able to go out and play a high intensity, high level match without that risk of pulling something. You can never replicate a match situation in training. I think anyone who's ever played football knows that. There's always another level that you can find and that you can step into when it comes to playing a match versus a training session. But it's the lack of training time, because you're in a situation as a football club at that level right now where you've got to choose between recovery and training. Recovery is obviously really, really important. So is training. And right now, we're not getting to do both as well as we'd like. And that's the problem that we have right now. So, yeah. Okay, let's take a short pause, shall we? And when we come back, we're going to discuss what I think the 11 should look like out in Brugge this evening. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat as well. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
I just want to let you guys know that today's episode is in partnership with Med Express. Did you know that 1 in 5 men in the UK experience changes in sexual performance as they get older? Med Express can provide support in minutes through a free online consultation. Med Express has been one of the country's leading online pharmacies since 2013 with over 1.5 million customers. By completing a short online consultation, they'll suggest the right treatment for your concerns, all from the comfort of your home. Their UK-based clinical team will support you every step of the way and send your medication straight to your door. And the best bit is the whole process is online. You do not have to visit your GP. It's hard to feel like yourself when personal health issues affect you, but MedExpress is there to offer you discreet and convenient professional guidance. Visit medexpress.co.uk to check your eligibility and get some money off with the code TCOAG. Check it out. That's medexpress.co.uk and the code is TCOAG. Do please check it out. And a big thanks to them for their support of the podcast. Right, if you're with us on YouTube right now, make sure you've hit that like button. It really, really does help. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. That also really, really does help. Hype the video if you're watching this back. We know that also helps. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review on those platforms, because that is also seriously, seriously helpful. Everything's helpful, isn't it, in terms of what I'm telling you right now. Also, listen, patrons, lots and lots of patrons have signed up of late, which I'm super grateful for. A massive thank you. You're going to get your next bit of patron content tomorrow. That'll be with you on Thursday, so please do keep an eye out for that. But if you're considering becoming a patron, well, now's as good a time as any, because if you visit our Patreon page, the link is in the description below, and you use the code that is in the description. Let me just remind myself of what that is, so I'm not reading it out wrong. The discount code is Xmas, so XMAS 25. You can get 50% off of your first month's membership. So you get 50% off, and you get to enjoy the bonus content. You get to enjoy every episode that we do completely ad-free. Plus, you get to be a part of our Discord server and wider Patreon community. So that's patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. The discount code is Xmas25. You get 50% off of your first month's membership. Do check it out. Thank you to everybody that signed up over the last few days. You'll each be getting a personal message from me over the next few days as well. So, patreon.com. The link is in the description, and now's as good a time as any, as I say, with that discount running up until Christmas Eve. Thank you so much. Okay, let's talk lineups then, shall we? How would I like to see Arsenal line up out in Brugge tonight? Well, the defense is where I've had my problems. But I haven't had any problems in goal. For me, I feel like as much as a goalkeeper probably needs less rest than the outfield players, I think Kepa could do with a bit of game time. I think David Raya could do with a bit of a reset, a bit of a breather, a bit of a break. I think there is such thing as mental fatigue, and I want to protect David Raya from that. I'm not worried about him physically per se, but I think mentally he could do with a sort of night off, and Kepa's as good a deputy as you'll find. Lewis Skelly would come in for me at left back. That's what I'd do there. I think Nkapie probably has to play at left centre back alongside Jurrien Timber, with Ben White playing at right back. But I do have some concerns here. Okay, I do have some concerns with this defense. First of all, if Timber and Nkapie are going to have to play together again at the weekend, I know that we'd prefer in an ideal world to wrap them both up in cotton wool and protect them, but I think they could benefit from playing together in that. That would just help form that bond and that partnership between the two of them. Ben White is one I'm worried about, because Ben White has played a lot in the last couple of weeks, and we're talking about a player that hasn't played a lot of football in the grand scheme of things this season. And so to keep starting him in such quick succession, it does worry me a little bit. This is a guy that we've waited for such a long time to get back to a level of fitness whereby he can be his usual self and really help us. And now I worry that we're running too much of a risk with him, but we don't have a choice at the moment. This is the problem. Unless you go really weak, unless you start putting young kids in there, like maybe Josh Nichols at right back, I'm not sure I would do that in a Champions League game. Some have suggested that maybe White should play at centre-back and that Timber should go over to the right-back position. I'm not dead against that, because I feel like we're lacking height in that centre-back pairing of Timber and Nkapie, height that Ben White would bring to the equation. But I suspect Mikel will keep it the way it's been. Ricardo Calafiori, he is unavailable for the game against Wolves at the weekend through suspension. Is there an argument that he should play today? If so, then stick him in at centre-back. That's what I would do. But I don't see that as being the way forward. I think Calafiori struggled to finish the game against Aston Villa at the weekend. And so there is an argument that given his patchy injury history, maybe he should just be given the week off with a view to coming back in his best possible shape and form after the weekend. Midfield, quite easy for me. Christian Norgard simply has to play. Otherwise, what the hell was the point in signing him? He would play in that central position for me in the 6 role. I'd play Ethan Nwaneri in the Odegaard/Eze role. And on the left side of that midfield, I would play Mikel Merino to give us a bit of security, a bit of experience, a bit of know-how. Mikel Merino only played a half against Aston Villa, so he should have had ample time to recover. And then on the left-hand side, I'm going with Gabriel Martinelli. On the right-hand side, I'm going with Noni Madueke. And centre-forward, I'm going with Victor Gyökeres. Let's get him back fit, available, and hopefully in and among the goals as we look to kind of bring him back to the level that we started to see before he picked up that injury. Obviously, there are other options available to Mikel Arteta. Gabriel Jesus provides an attacking option now as well, which is obviously good news. But in the end, this was the team that I settled on. There is a debate to be had about Calafiori. If Calafiori is okay and he's okay to play, then I'm probably making a change at the back. Maybe I'm taking Piero Nkapie out and putting Calafiori in at left centre-back just to protect him a little bit, because, again, he's another one that hadn't played a lot of football and now is super heavily reliant on. But this is the situation that we're in those defensive areas. Some would argue Marley Salmon should get a go. I'm sorry. I know that I said that this game isn't that important. Maybe people took that a little bit too literally, but I just, it's not as important as others in the grand scheme of things. It's not as important as Wolves in the grand scheme of things, but I don't think you can start throwing random. I say random. That sounds almost like I'm being disrespectful to young Marley Salmon. I'm not, because I've seen him play on a few occasions and I really rate him and I think he's got a big future ahead of him. But I just think the idea of throwing a bunch of kids in away in the Champions League against the Brugge side, that, yeah, they've changed their manager, but they've put in some stunning performances of late in Europe. I think that would be almost taking it a little bit too far. So the team I've settled on is Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal, White, Timber, Nkapie and Luis Skelly across the back line. Norgard, Marino and Nwaneri would be my midfield, with Martinelli and Madueke playing either side of Victor Gyökeres up front. That's my team. In terms of my prediction, I'm going to go for, people aren't going to like this, but I've got a fair few right in recent weeks. I'm going to go for Brugge 1, Arsenal 1. That's how I think this is going to end. I think if that is the case, there will be that inevitable meltdown that seems to follow Arsenal every time they don't win a football match. But I think we've got to condition ourselves pre-game to remain calm after this, whatever happens. Because if we get back to winning ways at the weekend against Wolverhampton Wanderers, we will be fine. Listen, I felt really down in the dumps after the Aston Villa game, and I found it quite difficult to move on from and to progress from. But at the end of the day, I think what you have to realize is that, you know, that one result in isolation shouldn't really change the way that you feel about Arsenal Football Club and their chances overall this season. I think there are times and there are points where, we are going to have wobbles, but it's important that we kind of get that all out of our system and reset and go again. That's what we're asking and demanding the players to do. And I think it's important as supporters and as fans that we make sure, that we too are resilient. We've got to be resilient and not take notice of some of the nonsense that's said about us, and not take notice of the memes going around. Arsenal bottle it again. You wouldn't believe how many of those I've received over the last week or so. I can't wait to send them all back when Arsenal hopefully win some silverware come the end of the season. Look, a massive thanks to every single one of you for joining me on today's pod. Really, really do appreciate it. I'm off to do some more work. I've got a fair bit on today, followed by commentary of the match, of course, tonight, which I'm really, really looking forward to. And tomorrow morning, we'll bring you reaction to that CLUB Brugge game, as well as bringing you some patron content around the game. We'll pick a subject from the game as well. So lots and lots to enjoy over the coming days. And remember, if you're thinking of becoming a Chronicles of a Gooner patron, getting access to our additional content, becoming part of our Discord server, getting access to our episodes ad-free, now is the time to do it, because there is a discount available where you can save 50% on your first month's membership. So visit patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. The code is Xmas25. Do check it out. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, really do appreciate it. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Simi, you time. Come on, you Gunners.